Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. My name is Francis Collado, and I'm your Executive Director of Visual Communications. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate our digital histories filmmakers and their stories in a year that we are also commemorating our 50th anniversary. It's been a challenging year for all of us, but it has been an inspiration to see and feel these artists challenge themselves, not just to finish their films, but to also to continue supporting each other during these times. Robert, Patty, Jeff, George, Don, Steve, Fran, Barbara, thank you for continuing to inspire. And Joel, thank you for your time, dedication, and patience. This is by far my favorite program that happens here at Visual Communications because it shows us that it's never too late to become a storyteller. We'd like to thank our generous partners who have supported Visual Communications and Digital Histories. Thank you to Sony Pictures Entertainment, the Aratani Foundation, Cato, Union Bank, AARP, and West One Music Group. And our deepest gratitude to our VC members and donors. Your support has enriched the lives of older adults by creating a space for them to engage with media arts to preserve histories for future generations. Folks, we proudly present Digital Histories 2020. Enjoy the show.
You want to be a what?
A filmmaker.
Why not some other job?
Yeah, like a surgeon.
A pediatrician.
Or a podiatrist.
Those are just different kind of doctors.
It's that stupid liberal arts college. Next thing you know, he's going to marry her.
But I'm good at making movies. I won this award.
Who's going to support an Asian American filmmaker?
Dad, just listen to me.
Who's going to help you? Huh?
I'm trying to tell you.
I'm trying to tell you. Who?
Hello, welcome to the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, produced by Visual Communications. I'm Joel Keyson. I am the instructor for the Digital Histories program, and I'm zooming in from Los Angeles. Thank you to all our partners who made the 36th annual Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival possible. We're going to get started presenting our Digital Histories filmmakers, and I'm going to introduce them. First is Francis Ito. Hi, Fran. You want to say hi?
Here I am.
Then we have George Wada.
Everybody.
Barbara Shore.
Hello.
And Robert Shoji.
How's it going, Joel?
So first, I'm just going to go, I'm going to go around real quick and then just tell me about your, let's talk quickly about your film. Tell us the name of your film and maybe a little quick introduction on what it's about. So Fran, you want to talk a little bit about your film and tell us the name of your film?
It was a mother-daughter trip to Alaska, and usually I go with a whole bunch of people, but this time it was just she and I, and it was really a wonderful rebonding because we haven't gone on a trip for a long time. But in the process of going on this trip, we were looking for the empty chair, which my daughter didn't know anything about. So and I did a lot of research on it. And what's interesting is it was about the Japanese people in Alaska, Juneau, particularly in that community, that were interned into the internment camp. And so that was part of our journey.
What was the name of your film again, Fran?
Mother-daughter journey. And then I used the latitude, you know. So initially that's what I had on there. So we'll see what you put on. It doesn't matter what. Yeah.
Okay. George, you want to tell us the title of your film, what it's about?
Mine's on the Japanese American National War Memorial. It's located in Little Tokyo, and it honors all of those Japanese Americans that have been killed from World War II to Korea to Vietnam to the most recent conflicts in the Middle East, including last November. One young man just passed away. But I did it because it's not as well known. When you talk about it, everybody assumes it's the Gulf of Growth Memorial by the National Museum. So I decided to do it on how this memorial came about.
Barbara, tell us about your film.
My film is called We Will Not Forget You. It's about an extraordinary young man by the name of Dale Inoue. He was diagnosed with leukemia at age 2, and he passed away at age 9. And he had an extraordinary life. It was short, but it was inspiring to everybody who knew him. And after he passed away, it's really a story about community, because the friends and family, they turned a tragedy into a triumph. They created a foundation. He had a wish not to be forgotten. So through this foundation, they help other kids with cancer. They help families dealing with childhood cancer and cancer research, and all through a basketball tournament and a luau. And they memorialize Dale's wonderful life through their efforts. But it's really about community, the love and support, and Dale's legacy lives on through their efforts, which bless a whole lot of people.
Robert?
Yeah, the name of my film is it's called The Hero's Hero, and by the way, Joel, thanks for coming up with the title. I ended up using the title you suggested. So it's about an uncle. His name was Yoshi Kuromiya. He spent time in prison for resisting the draft during his incarceration at Heart Mountain, and the film's also about his nephew Kiyoshi Kuromiya, who was a civil rights activist in the African American and gay communities.
Thank you all. So before we move forward, I want to talk a little bit about Digital Histories. Digital Histories is a program that teaches and supports APA older adults to use their unique voices and perspectives in sharing stories with the generations to come. So through filmmaking, the program seeks to engage the under and misrepresented population of APAs in mainstream media in a visible way. So each class is a gathering to share ideas and experiences, while the fellows learn the craft of filmmaking as well as the appreciation of the art, culminating in a completion of their own film, as we just talked about right now. So I kind of want to go around our filmmakers and ask them, so Fran, let's ask, how many films have you done? This is not your first time. How many films have you done?
Well, this will be my 10th film.
Wow.
And it's interesting because when I first made my first film, and the class, the teacher says, write 10 titles or subject you'd like to do. And I've covered every subject that I checked off the list. So that's it. I don't have any more.
You don't have any more?
Well, maybe a ukulele thing. I don't know. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. But yeah.
So let me ask you, Fran, like what keeps you coming back to keep making movies? Why do you want to keep making films for Digital Histories?
I think it's the people that's involved in it, for one thing. It's I don't use it as a social thing, but I think it's just to meet different people on different levels. We also, I have a story all the time. There's a story in me that I want to tell. And so that's another thing. And either write it or film it. And I didn't even know that I was a filmmaker until I started doing the film. And it's a challenging uh, subject, or activity, but I love it, and it's just takes me out of my comfort zone and brings me out into the open. Actually, of course, I don't need that, do I?
Fran, Barbara, tell us how many films you made and why do you come back and keep making films?
This is my third, and it's really, really fun. Like Fran said, the people are great. I miss not meeting in person, because when we used to meet in person, like, they're just so silly and there's so much laughing and creativity, and this has meant a lot, during this period of time, to have that creativity. But it's I didn't really have filmmaker friends, so this is such a special group of people, because otherwise, if you're talking about making films to somebody who doesn't make films, they don't quite get it. So it's really, really fun to have a specific group of friends that share that.
Thanks. So Robert, let me ask you this. I mean, also Robert, tell us how many films you made for Digital Histories.
Yeah, I had to think about that. This is my fifth. This is my fifth for Digital Histories. Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think it's important to have Digital Histories? Why do you think it's important for the community, for just to exist?
Yeah. Well, one thing is I think it gives a voice to older adults that, are traditionally maybe don't have that voice in terms of telling stories, through this medium. So I think, older adults, of course, you've lived a long time, you have many stories, you've been involved in the community, so this provides like this really great outlet to get these stories out there. And I think also by doing that, the people that are viewing these stories, can hopefully maybe learn something about what's happened in the community and things that have gone on, for a long time.
So I didn't ask you, why do you keep making films for Digital Histories, or even just for yourself?
Yeah, what happens is, we finish a project and you think, well, I finished the project, maybe I'm honestly done with this filmmaking journey. But what happens inevitably, and I think maybe with everybody, is just, living your life and talking to people, a story will pop up and that you never, knew about and never heard about. And so then, you kind of put two and two together and you think, well, this is a story that maybe needs, wider recognition or needs to be documented. And since we have this, great avenue of presenting the stories, you put the two together, it's just a really satisfying experience all around.
George, how many films have you made, and why do you keep coming back?
This will be my fourth film. I keep on coming back because there's so many stories to tell out there that most people don't know about. And that's the driving force, is that there's a lot of these stories just need to be told. And it's coming from that, well, as Robert said, it's from that older perspective. I should qualify that as, but I'm still adjusting to the fact that I'm one of those older people. And but as I go through these things, I'm starting to understand how my kids look at me as that old guy, and I am that old guy, and that perspective is different. And we look at all these films that these great people have done, and those films couldn't have been made when we were like 29 or 30. It's at this point, like Robert says, at this point of our lives where we've had that perspective and experience where we could convey these things to other people.
Right. So I'm gonna, Barbara mentioned about, we used to have our classes. Obviously, we haven't had our on-site classes since COVID and the lockdown. So what do you all miss about, Barbara mentioned a little bit about the camaraderie, and which I truly miss. I miss just sharing space and learning from each individual person. Everyone in the class brings so much to the class, brings so much experience, so many great stories and perspectives. And I really miss that, and just hashing out these ideas, and then also kind of sharing each other's skills and each other's expertise. So what do you all miss about like our Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon classes? Who wants to go first? Fran?
I like the potluck.
I miss the
Because
potluck.
that when you're in the classroom situation, you can't really socialize and you can't really exchange except before class or after class or during break. But on a potluck, you just anything goes, and then and you really get to know the different people that are in the class, and it's really wonderful. I think the potluck is a good thing. The whole class is wonderful, but I think the potluck is the juice of the class. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that. Anyone else want to add something?
I have a comment. I mean, it's kind of like there could have been a short film of some of the times that we sit at the table during lunch. George Wada is kind of like Barbara Walters, and he'll ask these questions. He's a sneaky guy. He asked me a question once, and it made me cry. So I'm trying to answer this question. I'm not going to go into what it all was, but so we'll laugh and we'll cry, and that in itself is kind of like a little film of just the experience of getting relationships and friendships, and what did you bring for lunch, and then you end up talking about who knows what, and you really end up spilling your heart and your soul, and it's just I don't know, it's kind of one of these days, Joel, you'll have to make a little film, but it's really cool.
We've talked about it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? So making your films, some of you when you first started making it, or even now you're veterans at it, like what have you learned about yourself making your films for Digital Histories? Fran?
I've learned that I'm not technically savvy.
But you are.
but somehow, because you have a story, that's the key to filmmaking. It has nothing to do with being technically good about it, And fortunately, I've had help from my daughter and different people. And this last film is the first time I did it on an iPhone, first time on an iPad. It's all that is all new to me, and I didn't learn it in class. You see what I'm saying? So it's every time I go to class, it's a different. Each film is different because it's if I'm using Final Cut Express, if I'm using a computer, if I'm using a camera versus an iPhone, that kind of thing, and so. And I didn't even realize I was going to make a film with what I did, with what I have this time. It was just pictures I took going on this trip. And when I read about the empty chair, that piqued my interest. So I had to borrow a book about the film and did some research before I went to decide to make the film, but I already had pictures, and so it was already made to order. All I had to do was move the film pieces around and do a little interview, which turned out really good.
You're a filmmaker. You made a film. Anyone else? Like, what have you learned, Barbara, Robert, George, about yourself?
I've learned I make the same mistakes year after year.
Let's not go into that, George. I know.
But
what did you learn?
It's an interesting process because I start looking at, like on TV, the documentaries and even the commercials. I start seeing how they're structured and everything. So it's a whole different ball of wax than what I'm used to. I'm an engineer by trade, so I think of things linearly, progressively, and this is completely different. It boggles my mind, the creation process. So it's been fun.
George, Barbara. Robert, Barbara. How about who wants to share some of their favorite memories about making this film that they did for this year, that you did for this year? Any memories?
It was a blessing to me to meet all the people in the film. So this foundation has two main fundraisers, a basketball tournament and a luau. And then we did 6 interviews. So it was 3 different shoots. So I grew up on I went to school close to J-Town, close to Little Tokyo, at a school we call it Marino. So, and I grew up in Monterey Park. So we were the East Side Japanese Americans, right? And then this whole community is the West Side. So I'm not as familiar with the Gardena, Torrance, that whole area. So it was really kind of fun to get a vibe of that whole community, because it's pretty incredible. I was blown away at when you go to these fundraisers, these things that they do. It's like whole families have been doing this, and the love and the joy. Dale's life was short, but they celebrate it, and they use it to have power to help other people that need it. And I don't know, I have a lot of respect for everybody involved in this whole, when you watch the film, all those people, I have a huge respect for all of them. They are good people, and right now in the world the way it is, man, we need more people like that, in my opinion.
So let me ask Robert, in terms of your film, what would you want people to take away from your film after watching it?
That's a good question. So with this film, what I'm hoping after people watch it is that it, I would say, like, introduces them or reintroduces the 2 characters or the 2 people in the film, Yoshi Kuromiya and Kiyoshi Kuromiya, reintroduces them to the general public. Now, Kiyoshi spent a lot of his life in Philadelphia area, so I think he's pretty well known there. But when I, asked at least the people that I knew, kind of in the LA area or in the Little Tokyo area, if they knew his name, I think maybe one person did, and I think, my hope is that that they just get reintroduced into the community. And then the other kind of second part to that is that that once somebody sees the film, and then they hear about, I would call it, these extraordinary lives these 2 gentlemen had. That they think to themselves, why didn't I know about these guys? And hopefully they go out to the internet, they do their searches, and they learn more about them. So that's what I'm hoping people take away.
Okay, Fran, how about you? In terms of your film, you learned a lot about yourself, and it was such a good experience for you and your daughter. What would you like people to kind of walk away with it? Whether a feeling or a thought or an idea?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Well, in terms of, like, what would you want people to walk away after watching your film? What would you want them to take away from watching your film?
Oh, you mean any film that I made?
Your film, the one you just made.
Well, this year's film.
This recent one.
Yeah.
It's actually, it turned out to be a surprise for me, because I didn't know that I was the whole subject was about the empty chair. And I think that people that don't know that people in Alaska were interned, and that it's just one high school student that couldn't graduate a week before, and he was put in a holding tank, I guess you'd call it, and then into the camps. But what happened was in 2014, they actually created a monument for a memorial for all the people that were interned. So it included all the people in Juneau. And so I had to do a lot of research on it, because I just read about it in the newspaper, and so when we went to Alaska, people didn't even know it existed. And where the monument is right here today is where the high school used to be, and it became a park. And that's where the chair sits. And it's really interesting how I would say that these are little stories that the Japanese community don't know about, you know. And so this is what I did a lot of research, and so I hope that they will keep their interest about either going to Juneau or researching it, because you know we know about heartfelt, and then we know about Lenzinar and the ones that are local, but this is people like up there in nowhere, you know, and so it was a wonderful experience searching for the information and or researching it, I should say, yeah. And I hope people come away with it, knowing that there were people, Japanese people living in Alaska that were interned. Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna ask. I know Fran says you did your 10 movies and you're done, and I know you're not. So what would I'll ask everyone? What would be your next film? What other stories you want to tell? Barbara?
I have no idea. I don't know. I'm just happy that I got a shower and got out of my pajamas today. So we're moving a day at a time.
How about you, Robert or George? I know you have a lot of other ideas you want to tell, other stories you want to tell.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure if I would make a film about it, but this current film that I made, you know, after I finished, there were some things I learned about both gentlemen that really blew me away and surprised me. So there may be, you know, something there for part two. Another short film, but maybe a part two to explore a different aspect of their activism. So possibly.
George, do you have any ideas you want to?
I have a whole list of subjects that I've compiled anywhere from. I've been involved in Asian basketball, been wanting to do something on that. One of the things I was trying to do for the last 2 years was the church in the internment camps, but I haven't been able to get enough research on that to do it. And so there's a lot of other community type things that I wanted to do. So, like I said, I have a long list, and which one I pick, I don't know.
Fran, how about you? I know you had a ukulele story you wanted to do.
Well, I do have some footage for ukulele. It was part of the expo that some years back, and I interviewed about 15 people. I even have the release and all that. But I played the ukulele myself with a group of about 40 people. And so I was born in Hawaii, and so never played the ukulele there. But when 9 years ago, there was an opportunity to buy a concert ukulele, and I bought it, and I took lessons, but I really didn't take lessons. They say just jump in, and that's what I did. And now I'm getting lessons from an instructor from Hawaii. It's a Zoom class, and so we're learning not only playing the ukulele and the chords, but the Hawaiian language and all what it means. So that could be part of the whole thing, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just want to say, especially this group, our veteran group who've done several films already under their belt, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with the newer filmmakers. And all of you are so like open and giving in terms of what you know and how to make films, that you were really willing to share all of your knowledge with them. And you were open to giving them advice or tips or whatever. And that, for me, I thought that was such a beautiful kind of aspect of our film program, because it's not just like all beginners. So everyone has coming from different expertise, different experience, and everyone is just sharing all of that knowledge. So I want to thank you all for being gracious and being really generous about that. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for your wonderful films, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And we're gonna get into our second group now. Thank you, Barbara, Fran, Robert, and George.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joel. Thanks a
Oh,
lot,
let's
Joel.
go like this.
All right.
All right, we have one of our digital histories vets, Steve Nagano. Steve, why don't you talk a little bit about your film? Tell us the name of your film as well.
My film is called Make It Sparkle, and it's for many years, well, let's say 4 years recently, we've done a community-wide cleanup where we've had, like, I think the least we've had was about 200, and last year, 2019, we had 400 participants, and we spend the morning cleaning up Little Tokyo. We work with the city. They provide us with brooms and all the stuff that to sweep the sidewalks, scrape gum. We purchase, anti-graffiti stuff, and so we do about 14 blocks from Los Angeles Street all the way to Vignes, sidewalks, post boxes, the few that are left. Whatever we can get our hands on to clean, and then we have lunch. So people work maybe an hour and a half, and then we have lunch together under the big tent at on the plaza, and it's really kind of a fun event. I started this about 4 years ago since I'm a resident of Little Tokyo and walking around just saying, like, this place needs cleaning up. And so I started talking to a few people, and it had been done before by the Little Tokyo Public Safety Association years ago, I think in the 90s, and they did similar type cleanup. It was actually going to be like a shameless PSA, because originally this was going to be shown on May 3rd. And the planned sparkle for this year was going to be May 9th. So I just want to kind of use it as a recruiting tool, sort of. Not that we needed to have people, because sometimes it's an issue. What do we do with all these people? Where do we put them, to clean up? It's been just wonderful. It's really been a community involvement project. The restaurants chip in by giving us gift certificates and things like that. The restaurants, the donuts, like a couple of the bakeries, they'll do all the morning stuff. Starbucks will kick in coffee. Far Bar will do lunch for us, and then we get the residence place where I live. We get the women, about 20 some women here, older women, to make rice balls, musubis, because we want them to feel a part of it, even though they're not quite able to go out and clean up. So, at the lunch we do all the raffling of all the gift certificates, and mostly to restaurants, but other things too. So it's really a feel-good kind of project.
So your film captures, the film is like about a day. That. Oh, okay. So like in a day, or like a spanning.
Yeah.
Okay. So
exactly.
So Steve, talk to us. You've been with, how many digital histories films have you made so far?
I think I've done 10. Might have been 9 or 10. So it's been every year since 2011.
So what keeps you coming back and making films for digital histories?
I think more than anything is the stories. When you start getting to know people, and they're not necessarily what you would consider, they're ordinary people like ourselves, and yet they have some extraordinary stories. that never see the light of day other than maybe within their family. You know, I've had a couple of films that made like sort of like little short bios on people, and they're like, say, "Hey, you made me famous," you know, which is like just a wonderful feeling. And then when you go to, we've gone to like different community events and been asked to show our films, you know, and it really resonates with the people because they see their lives sort of like on the, if you want to call it, the big screen, you know, and it somewhat validates their own existence, their life, what they've done, you know. Yeah, maybe. And so to me, that kind of like energizes me and keeps me coming back because of the feeling that people get from seeing people like themselves on film.
And is that kind of like why you think, why do you think that digital histories is important? Why we should have like this program? Why should we keep doing it?
Keep the old people off the streets. No,
Keep them out of trouble.
Yeah, that's, I think, really why, because, you know, first of all, I mean, of course, the technical side apart, the storytelling or the vision, you know, it's, as time goes on, you know, the times that we're raised in, of course, develops our values and things like that, but it also develops the way we see things, you know, our films, right? How we tell a story, as opposed to some of the, I would say, younger people, in terms of how they get the message out. And so I think for the older people is that perspective gets lost after a certain point in time. You know, the sensibilities, the vision, the way to tell a story, the people that they focus on, that sort of gets lost as, you know, because, you know, our culture is youth culture aimed at those kind of things. And yet, you know, there's, I think, these core values that I think run through all of this, and that we have something that's important to say and to share.
So, you know, after making 10 films, like, what do you think, like, you've learned about yourself during the course of making a film, or just even like the process of making a film, and, you know, from beginning to end? Like, what do you learn about yourself, or what have you learned about yourself?
About myself?
Yeah.
Oh, that I'm all over the place. In the sense of like interest, you know what I mean? I think one of the hardest things is trying to narrow it down. You know, of course, when you look at it, okay, I'm gonna do this film, I want to do this film. I mean, there's a totally two different things, right? I want to do this film, but I don't have the resources. I'm not willing to put out the effort. I'm not willing to, you know, knock on doors and dig through archives or whatever. So I guess that's kind of like learned about me. I kind of like want to take, I would say, in some ways, the easy way out. And so like a narrative film, which you involve people, you need actors, you got scripts, you got sets, you got all this. That's not something that I want to go to. Whereas, you know, like bios on people or maybe events is something that I would say a little easier, you know, and easier for me to do. I think that's one of the things, you know, I've been a teacher for 30 some years. And so you're kind of like in your own silo in your classroom. And I think that kind of continues with my filmmaking, you know, although I would love to do like, or be a part of a larger filmmaking process, you know, where maybe you have like section, I don't know what you call them, but crews, you know, okay, you guys will do a piece on this, but it's all unified in the sense of like all pushing toward the particular goals or objectives that either the producer or the director has in mind. And you have all these different crews doing a little part of it, and it's all put together in some sort of cohesive kind of message or story.
So maybe it could be about maybe this film, Sparkles, or name something, or kind of talk about a memory or something that you really enjoyed making this. Like, what did you enjoy making this film, or what gave you a lot of satisfaction?
Well, in this particular film, I think the satisfaction I get from it is like relaying to, I guess, a broader audience what Little Tokyo means to these people. I mean, why would you come out for like an all-day thing? I mean, what kind of people would do that, you know? I'm gonna clean, I'll take my gloves, I'm take my water bottle, I'm gonna go out there at like 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, I'm gonna start sweeping and scraping and doing this kind of stuff. So, you know, they have a particular spot in their heart for Little Tokyo. And that's a thing that I want to share and feature these people. So that's why I made the film. Besides that, since I've lived here for almost 10 years now, I really feel the threat of Little Tokyo changing to the point of where we're not going to recognize it, and even to the point of where it's going to be, they're going to throw the word historic in front of it. And we'll have memories and we'll have pictures and maybe we'll have some videos about a place that was once there. So I think that's another motivation I have for making this particular film, and other films that I've made about Little Tokyo, or little people in Little Tokyo, or about Little Tokyo, because I think an ethnic community like Little Tokyo, besides having 130 some years history, it plays a valuable role in the scheme of our American tapestry, because we have to recognize our differences, appreciate the differences, and respect the differences that we have, and enjoy them, you know, between different people of color. Not just people of color, white people too.
So Steve, like, you know, since COVID, we have not had an in-person class since. So what do you miss about our Saturday get-togethers with all the other filmmakers?
Food. That's one of the things that's come up in other meetings too, you know, like, hey man, I miss those nuts that you always bring or whatever. But I guess it's the interactive flow that you could have. You know, you don't quite have it like in a Zoom meeting. You know, you don't sometimes get the nuances, or you can't have that back and forth as easily as you might have when we're sitting, you know, around the sofa and down in VC. So in that sense, yes. But I've seen other things where, I mean, that's what I miss about, I guess, digital histories. Of course, seeing people, right? And interacting with them. But there are some things that, you know, that were really pretty good and well done on Zoom, primarily because of the format. You know, I think one of the things that it does is it makes our conversations a little more intimate. You know, I'm not talking across the room from you. I mean, even though you're like miles away, your face is like, you know, a one shot, and so is mine. And, you know, we're interfacing that way. So there's some things that are good about it, I think, but I do miss just the fellowship and getting together and, you know, all the sidebar stuff. You know, when you're in the Zoom meeting, you can't like, hey man, you know, you can't whisper to the person next to you. Yeah. Say, hey man, look at Joel. Look at Joel. Doesn't he look?
Not all the smart. Well, definitely, you know, I definitely miss just those little moments where everyone's kind of sharing their ideas, right? Sharing their knowledge, and that's definitely too. And
you can't roll your eyes, you know.
Yeah.
When you're on Zoom. Oh my God, they said that.
You can, but yeah, you can hide your video. So, you know, what other stories you want to tell? You know, there's so many stories in Little Tokyo. Is it you want to keep it in Little Tokyo? What other stories would you do? Like, what do you have any other ideas for films you would want to make?
Well, I'm working on some people right now on the legacy businesses.
Okay.
So we're going to do sort of like a Japanese style NHK, you know, where I don't know if you've seen those, but they have like two hosts. They might bring in the either the inventor or in this case would be the store owner, and then run some video about it and then talk about the history of it and the challenges that they might see ahead. So I'm working with the Historical Society, which I'm a member of, and we're doing several of these. We've got one in the can already about Sioux heroes. I would love to do one on, this is what I'm talking about, a larger project, is the sort of like the history of the redevelopment, or maybe even the history of Little Tokyo, focusing on the struggle to survive. And in some ways, the resilience that, I mean, here we are. I mean, like, what was it like in 1943? You know, it was totally nothing there in terms of Japanese influence, but post-war, it came back and probably pretty strong for a while, and in many respects, pretty strong right now. I mean, when you think about the ethnic communities in LA, where have they gone, you know? Which is really, really sad. I mean, just think how much, I guess, more enjoyment and fulfillment we would have if we were, oh, let's go to, you know, whatever, let's go to Little Italy, let's go to Little, you know, Greek, let's go to like Filipino town, you know, and you get a little bit of the culture. And so.
Great. I think, Ryan, that's all of my questions. All right, we're back again with our second group of filmmakers for Digital Histories 2020. I want to introduce our new filmmakers. These are first-time filmmakers for Digital Histories. First one is almost Jeff Chop, Patty Fong, and Don Benai. So I'm going to go around the room just like we did before. Jeff, talk about your film. What's the name of your film? And tell us a little bit about it.
It's called Francis Wong, Chinatown Revolutionary. So Francis Wong is pretty much a native of San Francisco. He's been an activist all his life. And, but before he even became an activist, he picked up the saxophone and became a jazz saxophone player. He also co-founded Asian Improv Records with John Jang. And this is pretty much the visual communications of jazz music. They've been recording Asian American artists for close to 30 years. And Francis, you know, has always, I guess, balanced that with being involved in the community and being a revolutionary. So essentially, this project started when Francis gave me a call one day and he invited me to come just basically hang out and take pictures of a gig that he was doing at the Hammer Museum in West LA. And so from there, I, you know, was very excited that he would allow me to kind of enter his jazz world. So basically I had a chance to hang out with him and just shoot some of his recording dates, and also a couple of performances, and just pretty much hang around. So, you know, I've known him for, I don't know, close to 30 years. I actually bought one of my cars for him. He had a BMW 2002 TII, which to car freaks, I think would mean something. So it was a very interesting car to come across. But anyway, so I shot all this footage, and I basically, I didn't know what to do with it, essentially. But I was invited to join Digital Histories, and so basically having a chance to hang out with other filmmakers, I really felt I wanted to put a story together, and so that's pretty much hopefully what I did.
How about you, Patty? Tell us about your film.
my film is called Dear Sally, and it's a story about an unlikely courtship that started out as a random pen pal relationship. They were introduced to each other by intermediary. Spoiler alert, they were my parents, and they did get married. So this is a story that my mom and dad had been told many, many times that they should write a book or make a movie. You know, people thought it was unique, and they didn't know what to do with it. And so an opportunity came when I attended the film festival in 2019, and I left inspired, and I left with the feeling that maybe I had an avenue to tell the story in a more broad way, a way that my mom and dad were never able to do. So it was daunting, the responsibility of telling their story. But it's been an amazing ride. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of lost sleep.
Did great. Thank you, Patty.
Yeah. Don and I
how about you? Oh, go ahead.
Don and I would chat sometimes. We would be like pulling our hair out. It's like, what do we do? I don't know. Maybe there's a YouTube video for that to teach us how to do that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Don, tell us about your film. What's the title of your film again?
My film is simply just katana. And katana is a Japanese sword. So really what the film is about, and the backstory, obviously, Joel, you know, most people would not. I basically had my first ever project completed in the can, and I ran into some administrative problems with the people that I was filming. So when the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, everything shut down. And it's like I'm sitting in my living room, it's dark, and I'm feeling bad for myself, really without too much of a solution. So Barbara Shore said, well, do something with some stuff you got around the house. So that's what I did. So the film ends up being about kind of being about a 250-year-old relic that is given to a Nisei soldier, an MIS soldier, brought back to the U.S. after World War II, and kind of following that story up till now, with a framework of what swords have always meant to the Japanese culture.
Thank you. I want to go back to what Patty was saying. You attended a digital history screening last year, and that kind of inspired you. So how did, you want to add any more to that? But I also want to ask to Jeff and Don, how did you get connected with digital histories?
I was bawling. There were some amazing stories. Dragon Boat by Kevin, my 102-year-old Nisei mother, I think is the correct title. I was just really moved, and I just I have stories in me I want to tell, and maybe if somebody's patient enough to help me with the technology aspect, I have stories to tell. So I thought, I was real excited. I was real excited to have been invited and to attend last year's festival.
Jeff, I know you have history with visual communications. Why did you decide I'm going to join Digital Histories this year and make a film?
Well, I think I was very excited by the fact that this is like the 50th anniversary of visual communications. And I was privileged to know Linda Mabalit very well, and just being completely inspired by the history of, you know, documentaries from the roots of visual communications. And certainly I felt privileged to be able to have a chance to actually create a story that hopefully will be included with the history of films made at Visual Communications. So I think the most, you know, amazing things about documentaries, of course, is capturing a moment in time that that won't be, you know, repeated. And so essentially in my film, I caught a moment of, I guess, showing respect for Colin Kaepernick, and the moment that he took a knee. And here we are 2 years later, like, that's totally acceptable. And it's like, you know, people finally get it. But it's amazing that it took, you know, 3 years to get it, because certainly at the time that he did it, he was met with a lot of people who couldn't understand what the hell was going on. And I think with Black Lives Matter, you know, we finally, you know, come to the moment where we really have to reconcile a lot of things in our culture.
Thanks, Jeff. How about you, Don? Tell us about like how you got involved with visual communications and digital histories.
So first off, again, like Jeff, I've been aware of visual communications for, I don't know if I've been aware of them for 50 years, but the George Waters film on some friends of mine in the Buddha Breakfast Club last year was an opportunity to attend the film festival. And so I came away from the film festival going, I've got some time, maybe I'll make a film. And so it really was that simple. I had no clue what I was getting into. And fortunate that the structure of the classes that VC has provided to digital histories has really worked out pretty well for me, I think.
So let's go around. Like, what do you think why do you think having a digital histories is important? Why do you think, what's this value? Well, Jeff takes a call.
Okay, so well, Jeff takes the call. How about me?
Okay, Don, go ahead.
Joel, I think, again, particularly this year, the last 6 months, when you talk about in your intro today, you talked about marginalized communities, and you know, I've got a lot of friends who are very comfortable and are moving to a more conservative mindset. And so I think digital histories provided for me a way to stay engaged. And yes, I would have preferred to have stayed engaged every other week in J-Town with all of you face to face, but just the timing on this has caused me then to stay engaged to almost everybody in the class on an individual basis. So I can't tell you how many emails have gone back and forth, whether it's between you or Abe or the other members of the other fellows who absolutely encouraged me and walk me through something that that really I had no clue where I was at and how to get to where we wanted to go. So I think that is incredibly important to keep people engaged in communities and look at what are the messages, what are we articulating, and why do we need to get better at articulating, like George Waters said earlier. I'm very clear in the middle of this project that younger people articulate differently, and so so I got to get better.
So, I mean, as first-time filmmakers, for you, Patty and Don, what did you learn about yourself?
If I knew how hard this would have been, I might not have signed up. It is hard. But I remember we had a guest speaker in, and my takeaway was, if you're gonna do this, don't do it halfway. And you just plow through all those walls. Those walls are there, just to see how bad you want it. And I don't know, it's just been a real. I'm sorry, I forgot your question, Joel.
What did you learn about yourself? Yeah.
With a lot of support from my husband, who's real technically inclined, and my kids, who are very technically and artistically inclined, and the group. A lot of stuff is possible, and I didn't think I'd make it to the finish line, but all of you guys pushed me along. It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
I didn't think I could do it.
We knew you could do it.
Glad you had faith.
We knew you could do it. How about you, Jeff? What do you think? What have you learned learned about yourself making this film?
That I put off a lot of stuff, and something like a project like making a film, you got to kind of have to do stuff. And being a beginner, there's just a lot of buttons and menus and just all kinds of little things that you have to know to be able to get started.
Yeah, and then Don, did you want to add something?
Joel, this is an exercise in failure. I can't tell you how much there is to learn and how much respect I have for anybody who's put any kind of project like this out there. So the failures, like just talking about, they're buttons, they're things, and you go, oh, how do I do that? Or, oh, darn, where did that go? And how do I find it again? And so it is such a multidisciplinary opportunity. And I've got a couple friends who were with me the whole way. One of them the other day described me as very OCD. And you really have to be kind of OCD to get a project like this to the finish line. So you have to be broad stroked to have a concept, but you also have to be OCD to take care of the details. So I learned a lot about myself, and again, grateful for, in a time of incredible challenges, mental health, anxiety, pandemics, protests, and now fires, that that there was some reason to get up in the morning or stay up late at night to with a project to hopefully of some value.
Yeah. And you know, we talked about it earlier in terms of our classes. We haven't been able to have one in months where we got to see each other in person because of COVID. So what do you all miss about that, or any memories about our time together on our Saturday afternoons at Visual Communications? Who wants to share something? Potluck, as Fran talked about.
So I
real characters in our group.
Right. And
Yes.
I'd agree with that, Patty. And individually, everybody brought something to that potluck table. Joel, whether it's Francis or you or Abe or any of the other fellows, again, I can almost pinpoint specific things that that helped me with not just this project, but with how I approach the class, and so incredible lessons, incredible opportunities that go on in a deceptively simple setting.
So I was gonna. Do you want to add something, Jeff?
Yeah. I think it's amazing being around, I guess, people my age, and just feeling that just because, we're not kids anymore doesn't mean that we have to act mature all the time. And that's probably the best part of hanging out.
I agree. So I want to ask everyone, I know, this is your first film, Patty and Don. Jeff, you've made films before, but what are other stories you want to tell? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of ideas now after making this. Maybe Patty? What do you
I'm
think?
actually thinking about two. One is telling the story of Chinese hand laundry. My mom was raised in a old-fashioned laundry where they wash and iron, and all the kids lined up and they fold up the laundry, wrap it up in brown paper, and tie it up with a string, kind of a thing. And that's I'm kind of curious how my family ended up in the middle of the country, in St. Louis. Asians were in New York and Seattle, San Francisco, LA, but it seems so random, and I don't know if there's a story why St. Louis. And then the second thing I've been thinking a lot about is the story of paper sons. My father is a paper son, as well as my father-in-law. And actually, my father's surname is not the correct surname. And that's a whole story. My dad has many birthdays because of all his paperwork is all messed up. So I want to try to find my father's interrogation translation. My father called it the interrogation. I think the government called it the interview, when people got off the boat. And I just think that's a fascinating story that younger immigrants don't know how the older Chinese, the earlier Chinese, got to this country.
You, Jeff and Don, do you have any ideas already? Are you thinking about?
Yeah. Recently, I experienced an art exhibit like I've never experienced before. Basically, it involved being on a canoe to row up to under a bridge in Venice, the Bologna, I think it's the Bologna Lagoon Bridge or something. And underneath the bridge is art. So generally the concept is that you'll get on the water and be transformed into a portal, into a different space. And so there's a whole lot of stuff that happened on my visit that not going to bore anybody with right now, but I think there's a semblance of an experimental film that I'd like to try to do.
How about you, Don?
So, yeah, I don't have anything specific in terms of a subject. I think there are lots of subjects. It's the original subject I was going to go ahead and start with in this program. But I think that the two things that I'm real aware of is moving cultural concepts forward and that are still relevant. That and the other thing is to experiment technically with a much more contemporary delivery. For example, again, just in terms of the speed of the edits, the speed of the cuts, the entire rhythm of a production to connect with the younger generation.
Thank you, Jeff and Patty and Don. It was great having you. First time in the class. This is my second year, and it was such a pleasure. And I want to thank everyone. I just wanted to say, as an instructor for Digital Histories, it's been a pleasure to spend Saturday afternoons with you folks. The creativity and passion to tell your story has been inspiring to me. They truly reaffirm the idea that all our stories are important and that all our voices should be heard. So your generosity to share your experience and knowledge should give everyone hope as we journey forward through our own lives. Nothing stops when you get to a certain age or a certain place in life. You keep growing and learning. So teaching this class has been transformative for me, an experience for me as a person and as a creator and organizer. I'm truly grateful for all of these filmmakers' exuberance to express themselves through film and their eagerness and hard work to learn and refine their craft. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I look forward to more films. It's going to get easier, maybe a little harder too sometimes, but there will be more films in your future, and I can't wait for them. So that's a wrap for us. I want to thank so much to everyone. Don't forget, 2020 marks the 50th anniversary for visual communications. Please consider making a donation to our BC 50 celebration campaign. Visual Communications is a 501c3 charitable nonprofit organization. Your donation is 100% tax deductible and goes directly towards supporting BC's year-round artist program. So to keep an eye out on the schedule, and please visit festival.dcmedia.org. So enjoy the rest of the festival, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, Joe.
Good job.
Hey, Joe.